fellow Americans, are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Welcome to Homeowners for Justice with founder C.J. Holmes. Listen to this.
And that's sort of another area. You have a housing program that was supposed to spend $50 billion to help struggling homeowners. And as I detail in the book, Geithner admitted to us that it was really more about, in his words, foaming the runway for the banks. And the result, a program that to date has spent just around 3 of the $50 billion.
The Treasury Secretary admitted
foaming the runway for the banks.
That was his phrase. Foaming the runway for the banks.
What he said was that the banks can handle a certain number of million foreclosures over a certain period of time. Any more than that would put them in jeopardy. And this program would help foam the runway, help stretch out the foreclosure crisis. And that's why more money has been spent. More TARP money went to American Express, a credit card company, than went to help all the struggling homeowners. The $4 million that this program was supposed to help and didn't deliver.
How do you break that?
Welcome to being at the bottom of the list. This is just an outrage, and we demand the owners must unite and demand restitution. We have with us in just a couple of minutes Kevin Harvey from John O'Brien's Registrar of Deeds office in Salem, Massachusetts, Southern Essex County, and what they are doing to get restitution. But I just want you to understand that right now, these articles are being written. There's little evidence of foreclosure fraud, and the feds have given up. Now, that is an absolute outrage because it's obvious that they are not listening to you and me. They're not listening to the people. If they can't find foreclosure fraud, trust me, anybody listening to this show can help them find it. It is not like it's hidden. It is hiding in plain sight. And why our officials cannot see it, I do not understand. I just want to bring these articles to your attention real quickly, and then we're going to turn it over to Kevin to present to us what they're doing and when and how it works, and can the rest of us counties get involved? How can this help the people? Here's the article I mentioned yesterday. Home seizures rise as banks adjust to foreclosure flow. Are you kidding me? It sounds like this is a river and that we have nothing to do with how it happens and what's going on. That was written just in December. Here's one written by New York Times op-ed columnist Joe Nocera, The Foreclosure Fiasco. And I want to point out, he says, this just illustrates, this recent settlement with the OCC, illustrates the foreclosure misdeeds and everything that's wrong with the way the government has handled this great foreclosure crisis. And thank goodness somebody's actually calling it that. For every homeowner, for the millions of homeowners that have lost their homes, and those that are at risk of losing their homes, and those that are underwater and are in the pipeline to be in risk of losing their homes, it's a huge crisis. Here's the 4 ways he points out. 1, it's more about public relations than problem solving. Oh my goodness. When were the homeowners just a public relations nightmare? 2, accountability. What's that? They don't even want to be held accountable. You know, in the savings and loan crisis, thousands of people were put in jail. White collar crime. So far, very few. Number 3, the settlement won't actually help anybody. You know, and this is what I say, you know, they're putting $25 billion or settling at $8.5 billion. These are drops in the bucket to the illicit, illegal profits that have lined their personal pockets. The settlement, here he's saying, the settlement will cover some 8.3 million foreclosures. So if they actually distributed the money to the homeowners, it's like $868 for stealing a person's home. And then number 4, the money is being distributed with no regard to whether the borrower even suffered harm. So it is just an outrage, and we really must stop this. back in July, there was an article that talked about as many as 90% of the foreclosed properties were held off the market. They call it the shadow REO. And I know for an absolute fact that the foreclosures are still occurring. I count the numbers on the MLS listings and I see that they are not being listed. Foreclosure listings this year have dropped to a 5-year low. So even though they have inventory from the past and they are foreclosing this year, they are not listing them. And we heard yesterday from Darwin and other articles and numbers that it's the hedge funds that are buying them. Huge investors, they're buying, thousands of homes at a time, building rental portfolios that span the continent and shoving the people out. We've already known and been told that maybe 10% of those people that lose their homes will ever have home ownership again. This is an outrage to the people, an outrage to our property recording laws, an outrage to everybody except the banksters and evidently our government, because they don't seem to be that outraged. So here to help us figure out more ways that we can stop this monstrous machine is Kevin Harvey. He's the first assistant registrar of deeds in Salem, Massachusetts. He's working with John O'Brien. I've got John's picture up here with some of the neat shots from a video that we took where he's actually showing on the table 38,000 forged documents. So Kevin, welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and you're doing some action. So why don't you give our viewers just a little bit of update? Some of them probably were on that conference call with John and you several months ago. Most probably will not have been. So why don't you bring us up to speed of what you've been doing from the beginning and what you've just recently done?
Well, if you want me to give you a little brief history, I think it might be worth it for new folks who are actually tuning in. But the issue that we've been involved in originally was going back 3 years ago when we had a constituent who actually came into our registry, which consists of 30 cities and towns in the northeast section of Massachusetts, and told us that our records were not accurate in that the party of the bank that was foreclosing on her did not own her note and mortgage. So, as you can imagine, the amount of angst that created on the person at the recording counter, who thought that the woman was not grounded in reality, and then I end up talking to her for about an hour and a half and did some background checking on what she had given me for information, and I found at that point in time that she was absolutely correct. And you can imagine the kind of anxiety for someone who takes the job of Register of Deeds and the integrity of our documents and our computer system, which has won a Smithsonian Award. We took that very seriously because, let's face it, for citizens, in the rights of our state and all across this country was the creation of Registry of Deeds was to protect the integrity of the land records so that citizens could go into the public arena, public records, at any time and see a correct chain of title of ownership of their note and mortgage.
Now, let me just interrupt you here real quick with a question, Kevin. What did she bring with her to show you that it who was foreclosing didn't own the note or was the wrong party?
Well, it wasn't very difficult to show us. Basically, she had the paperwork from the action being taken against her, and it didn't match up to the public records. It's that simple. Which, quite honestly, you could probably go to any registry of deeds in this country, even as of today, with all that has gone on, and probably have that same situation occur in every registry of deeds across the country.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm writing down these items so that we as citizens can clone what happened in our counties. Go ahead. Thank you.
So in Massachusetts, every time you sell your note and mortgage, the banks are required to file an assignment of mortgage on the updated ownership of your note and mortgage. And what was going on, we later determined that banks, MERS in particular, and the 5 large national banks and others were simply not filing the appropriate documentation in the registries of deeds in Massachusetts to keep the integrity of the chain of title intact. So we went and did some technology where we used our optical character recognition and found we went from 1998, roughly around the same time MERS was created, to the present, which was back 3 years ago, and determined how many MERS mortgages had been filed with the Registry of Deeds here in Salem. And at that time, it was about 168,000 mortgages. We then wanted to bring to the attention of all the investigatory agencies in this state, Attorney General, et cetera, U.S. Attorney, et cetera, as to the loss of revenue that was not coming in to the state because of the failure for these banks and MERS to follow the law and file their assignments. And we wanted, obviously, we couldn't actually look at the assignments because they didn't file them. So we had to reach out to an expert, and we reach out to Professor Peterson in Utah, who gave us that most of these mortgages were sold 5, 6, 7 times as mortgage-backed securities, and of course were locked in all across the world in these securities. So he conservatively said you could use 6 times that these mortgages were sold during the boom, and that you would have lost for all 168,000 MERS mortgages about 6 assignments. So to make it conservative, we decided to only use 2 because we did not want anyone challenging our financials. And that in this registry district, we lost about $22 million
Oh my goodness.
in state revenue. Well, of course, at a time when the economy was very, very bad and much needed.
And Kevin, just another quick question. You said 168,000 mortgages. Out of how many would that be? How many mortgages were actually done during that period of time that you're counting?
Well, we didn't OCR that. We didn't do that type of statistic because we were looking for specifically MERS mortgages.
Right. Okay, that's fine.
We determined that we lost about $22 million, and we are one of 21 registry districts in the state of Massachusetts. So doing the simple math, you can see that we're talking about $250 million or more, most likely as high as $660 million worth of lost tax revenue, taxpayers' dollars that should have been coming into the Commonwealth. We immediately sent a letter to our Attorney General Coakley, publicized it all across the entire country, and received a call from a mortgage forensic auditor whose job is to check the validity of documents, a woman by the name of Marie McDonald, who we never heard of. And she came to us and was very happy that we had taken a leadership role in exposing this. And she said, look, what I'd like to do is to come into your registry or be able to pull the documents of assignments by these 5 major MERS shareholder banks and see what the validity of the documents were. Of course, we told her we had no money for us to do that, being in government, and she decided to take on the project pro bono. At that point in time, after her analysis, and she uses, obviously, she's a mortgage forensic fraud examiner, so she has access to tools regular citizens and government agencies don't have access to. The ABS net system, the Bloomberg terminal, all costs quite a bit of money to join per month. And she had access to that information where you could actually find a mortgage and see where it's at, see whether it's actually in the hands of the bank that claims it owns it, or is it in some mortgage-backed security somewhere else.
Right.
And what she determined after doing a forensic audit at our registry was that not only were there not assignments being filed in the registry, but that the ones that were filed, only about 16% of those were legal, valid, and non-fraudulent.
Oh, geez.
So, obviously, this type of thing was very, very disturbing to Register O'Brien and to myself, and we decided to, once again, to take action and move forward. And of course, right around that time, we had the exposure by 60 Minutes of the infamous Linda Green robo-signer,
Right.
which, of course, exposed to 15 million people that DocX and other fraudulent companies that were paid to basically produce fraudulent documentation had been paying people $10 an hour to sit around a table to simply not only not sign their own name, but to sign somebody else's name so that banks at that time could be able to try to falsely patch up the chain of title to people's homes so they could persecute a foreclosure. So what we decided to do at that point in time was once again putting pressure on our state attorney general and putting pressure on the investigatory agencies and saying this cannot be, this cannot. Now we know that we have Linda Green on 60 Minutes saying, oh, I'm Linda Green, but no, there are other people signing my name. And then we did some additional optical character recognition work in our registry, and we found that we had 22 different
Yes.
varieties, if you will, of signature types for Linda Green.
Right. Right.
So we then went with our forensic auditor and we started culling other information and data all across the country, and in particular information that concurred with documents filed here in our registry. And Marie McDonald starting to put together the robo-signer list that is currently housed on the Salem Registry of Deeds, salemdeeds.com, for anyone to see.
Right.
And what Register O'Brien decided to do at that point in time was we know now that these documents are potentially fraudulent. So as those robo-signer documents came in, and usually they come in from the mail, wire fraud.
Right.
Of course. And some would be walked in by, unsuspecting title examiners, but for the most part they come in by the mail. And it's the usual culprits, the big national banks, Bank of America, Citi, Wells Fargo, etc. And what we would do is we made up an affidavit that said to the banks that were filing these documents, okay, you have a Linda Green signature on your document. We're not accepting that. And here, if you want us to put it on record, all you have to do is sign our affidavit that attests to these signatures on this document that the people are who they say they are.
Right. What a concept.
What a concept, right? You sign as a notary, you sign as a vice president, everything's notarized and certified, and the information on the document should be accurate. And you would think if someone challenged you there and simply asked you to sign an affidavit concurring that you are who you say you are, you should have absolutely no issue with signing the affidavit. To date, take a wild guess as to how many of these banks have had someone sign the affidavit.
Okay, my wild guess is 0.
Zero, correct. 100% zero, which of course we know is an admission of guilt.
Absolutely.
So what they would do is then send in another document with the same information on it, signed by different people. We would then record that document and immediately send that document into the bank, telling them we're referring it to the state attorney general for her investigation on fraud, because we have a brand spanking new mortgage fraud statute in this state that's pretty strong.
Okay, so is the AG doing something with this?
Well, back in December 1st of 2011, the Attorney General, at our coaxing, filed a major lawsuit in our state against the 5 major banks, MERS, with robo-signing and other things wrapped around it on December 1st of 2011 in Suffolk Superior Court, which is still in litigation.
Okay.
We got them to do that. At the same time, of course, there was a settlement of $20 $25 billion, which we were opposed to by this 49 out of the 50 state attorney generals, Oklahoma being the only one that didn't want to sign on to it. Not because he didn't think it was strong enough, it's because he didn't want to hurt the banks. Go figure that. But the bottom line is, we were not in favor of selling out for that price, specifically because what was owed the homeowners we thought was ridiculous, that you're going to give someone who's had their home taken with fraudulent documentation a $2,000 check.
Right.
You could find them. And quite honestly, this country was built on property rights. In this country, we all follow the law. No one's over the law, and you don't concede, and you don't, actually sign a document giving leniency to banks who have broken the law and taken people's property. That's not what we do in this country.
Except that's what we're doing now.
So we proceeded to take action by making noise as it relates to putting our money in Bank of America. We banged the cans and created a lot of problems with that. We've moved Bank of America money out of the registries of deeds all across the state. We put it in the Citizens Bank. Not great, but better than Bank of America. And what we've done of recent history, which is, I think, part of what you have for an interest, is last Friday was the original deadline for filing as a victim in the now well-known case of the United States of America versus Lorraine Brown, who was the president of DocX / LPS, which was probably one of the biggest fraudulent document mill in the country. And what she's pleaded to is a conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, which is what I told you goes on all the time. They always come in by the mail.
Right.
And she is going to be sentenced in April, and we filed an affidavit claiming that after we did an OCR search on our computer system that there was 10,500 some odd DocX documents on people's chains of title here in our registry district, and we filed a affidavit request for restitution for our constituents as victims. And we're saying that we're requiring that the banks that use DocX to file these fraudulent documents in people's chains of title to actually repair the fraudulent documents by filing new documents that are accurate. And we're asking for a forensic audit to ensure that what these banks will give us is accurate.
But now, Kevin, basically, they can't do that, right?
No, we don't think they can, and we think, quite honestly, that if the judge, and we have, hopefully we'll go along with this, what this will do, we believe, is open up the issue of fraudulent documents and chains of title, not only in our registry district, but all across the country.
Exactly.
Because the reason why we want to have it go hand in glove with a forensic audit is because we will then have all of the ability and information to determine that when we do receive a document, is that or is that not accurate?
Right.
What we'll do is it'll crack the nut, we believe, all of this fraud that's been going on all across the country.
Now, here's we're just so thankful for your leadership, I swear, because people are just suffering untold misery, as I know you know, and it's totally illegal. Justice is on its head. The judges are ruling in favor of the banks virtually no matter what, almost everywhere, and trying to turn this big ship around and fight against the special interest, because these banks we've already talked about yesterday how the judges' pension funds are in these mortgage-backed securities. And so, their thought process goes, if I rule against the bank, then I'm ruling against my personal interests. And frankly, any judge with a pension in one of the mortgage-backed securities has a conflict of interest, I think, and should be, recuse himself from that decision. Nevertheless, I have a question specifically about this demand for restitution. I've got John's affidavit up on the screen, and so you're asking not just for damages, but for the forensic audit for all of the corrections. Do you think this judge is going to give it to you?
Well, put it this way, one never knows what a judge is going to do, but let me just say this. In my opinion, and we've seen it here in Massachusetts, the tide seems to be turning towards the homeowners and the consumers. At least it has been here. We have had several major state Supreme Court decisions that have been in favor of the homeowner, and we've had some additional state legislation that's actually helped the homeowners as it relates to closure and to integrity of titles. So I don't know what's going to happen. Certainly, I would go broke if I was betting on how I could conclude how a judge will rule in any case.
Right.
If one doesn't go in and file an affidavit basically asking for restitution and participating in the process, I can tell you have no chance.
Right. That makes total sense. Now, is I've got up here the affidavit for Marie McDonald. Is she just submits that to the court? Do John and Marie have to actually go to court? What's going to happen on that? Do you know?
Well, there a lot of things could happen. I believe that we file these affidavits with the probation officer there in Jacksonville Middle District, and the judge will deal with the victim's request for restitution in camera. So if they invite us to actually participate, we will be there. We'd be happy to be there. We may be there at sentencing anyway. Any additional information. We have also sent the judge not only Marie's affidavit and our affidavit, we sent them a DVD of the 10,565 or so documents that are fraudulent on our chain of record from DocX, so that the evidence is also there that can be viewed off any PC.
Oh, perfect. Now, I have a question. When you said he's doing the judgment in camera, what does that mean?
It's in private. It's not a public arena courtroom thing. It's done, from my understanding, by the lawyers helping us, and we've had some really good ones. That's how I believe that they treat the victims. In restitution cases, they do it in private.
Right.
And then the decisions of the judges is in open court.
And so the interaction, I'm assuming that the victims ask for restitution and could be in front of the judge. And then once he makes a decision, he goes into open court and reads those decisions.
I believe it's read, the victims' restitution statements, I believe, come at sentencing, which will be in April.
Okay, sentencing in April. Now, didn't I hear you actually say that last Friday was the last day any county or any victims could file for restitution in this case?
Well, what happened was last Friday, which I believe was the 11th, was the original deadline. And then the defense attorneys have asked for an extension of the deadline. The judge opened it up till February 14th, so we then filed some additional affidavits, and we amended our original affidavit and included some other strong language. So I believe it's open for restitution request from Lorraine Brown until February 14th.
Oh my goodness. So we have another month. I mean, three weeks or so.
That's correct. Anybody that would like to file, that is able to determine by going in and, using a computer system. All the computer systems for registries of deeds, they're not that complicated. They're a database.
Okay, guys, you viewers, all you activists, all you homeowners, we're going to have a plan. We're going to go into our counties and we're going to find DocX signings, and we're going to get our counties to file for restitution. Here's a question for you, Kevin. Do you have any knowledge? Okay, you're asking for 1.2 million, something like that, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so who's going to pay that?
What is my understanding is the assets of Lorraine Brown are reviewed by the United States attorney and the staff, and she's required to submit financial statements as to her assets. We've been working a bit with Mark Devereaux, who is the United States attorney, assistant United States attorney in this case. Before it was going to be going to trial, John and I, Register O'Brien and myself, potentially were going to be expert witnesses in this case. We've spoken to Mr. Devereaux, and of course, I don't know to what degree the work that we have already done in this registry on DocX was part of the reason why Lorraine Brown decided to plead as opposed to going to court.
So here's the question. What if you're asking for 1.2? What if, and I'm guessing that the other counties in Massachusetts have not combined with you or followed your lead or aren't doing this?
Well, we just sent them our affidavit to all the other 20 registries of deeds. We sent them our affidavit this week. So it's clearly, we don't tell other registries of deeds what to do.
Right.
We sent them our affidavit and what we've done and what we're trying to do for our constituents. It's all up to them.
So let's just say that it's $1 million per county. There's 3,100 counties in the nation. So we're talking $3 billion if everyone filed. Now, obviously, there's not enough assets to go around. What do you think would happen?
Well, what we're hoping to have happen is if we can get restitution in an audit from the judge, then at that point in time, we will do our due diligence, which everyone on this call knows will be thorough. And if we discover what we believe we will discover, then the big banks, who are the large pockets here,
Exactly.
going to have some serious concern as to what the outcome of this Lorraine Brown restitution request might be.
Right, because basically wasn't Lorraine and DocX, they were a subcontractor, I think, for LPS, Lender Processing Services.
What happened was DocX LLC merged with LPS.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's basically, and Brown was the president and senior manager of LPS Document Solutions, which constituted DocX operations. So there's clearly a parallel. In our opinion, there's clearly some tentacles wrapped around DocX and LPS.
And those are, they were hired or are subsidiaries, I'm not sure which, of the banks to do the foreclosure mill paperwork, right?
Right, and I think I'm not so naive as to believe that the banks didn't know what they were getting from DocX.
Oh, they knew, trust me. Because, for example, Recon Trust is doing the exact same thing, and they are a wholly owned subsidiary of Bank of America. They know exactly what they're doing. And the fact is, they've done it on such a large scale, they're getting away with it. That is the point.
Well, we're involved in helping out some folks in the media in California that are interested in Recon.
Oh my goodness. I'd love to interact with you on that because we have to shut Recon Trust down in California. They've already been shut down in Washington and Oregon. And
It's
I also,
confidential and embargoed at the moment.
pardon, say that again?
It's confidential and embargoed at the moment
Okay.
on who we're dealing with in the media.
Oh, okay. That's okay. We just want them to win. We want them to succeed, and we want to just stand up with them and for them on behalf of all the homeowners in the nation. These foreclosure mills, I know that Marshall Watson down in Florida has recently been shut down. Is there any chance that you could clone your restitution requirement for them? And in other words, go after every foreclosure mill the same as we're going after Lorraine and Doc X.
We welcome any action by any other entities that want to take a leadership role in helping us.
Exactly. It has taken a lot of time on your office, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes.
to say it mildly, I'm sure.
An understatement.
Yeah, everyone's working overtime. We're all doing two jobs. We have to do our normal job, and then we have to do this fight back job. And literally, no one's basically paying us to do this. This is because we want to stand up for right. Now, I've got some questions for you that people have emailed in. How thorough and complete and updated would you say that the robo-signer list is that owners can get affidavits from your office for?
Well, our RoboSign list is public. It's all of the names on that list are not put on by us with a Ouija board. They're put on after being reviewed and analyzed by a mortgage forensic auditor. So every one of those names on that RoboSign list is confirmed by our mortgage forensic auditor, fraud examiner. So we've had several of the individuals on that list threaten to sue us and to come after John and me. And what we've always said to each and every one of them in writing and in person is, please do us a favor. Please file an action against us so that we can then have discovery. We can then sit down and have a discussion in front of a judge on what we know. So to date, you can imagine how many lawsuits, of all the threats we've had, how many lawsuits do you think have actually come after us?
Zero. Yes, I swear it feels like a paper tiger. It's huge, it's horrible, it's fearful, except when you start blowing, it just blows away because they don't have any legal standing. They really don't.
Well, the short answer is if these multi-billion-dollar enterprises, which have a raft of lawyers at their beck and call that they pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to, thought we were doing something that was wrong, we would have been sued.
Exactly. Long ago. Absolutely.
Long ago. And matter of fact, we like to, pride ourselves in hanging up a shingle that says, please, sue us.
Exactly. And please do it quick so that we can get discovery going.
Do me a favor. Let's have depositions in discovery. We'd like nothing better. We have some of the best attorneys that will represent us free of charge.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am actually getting contacted by other attorneys around the country that want to jump in and help. They have to be a large enough firm to be able to absorb this kind of pro bono work. But, truly, and I've been saying this now for years, if we stop the foreclosure crisis, we stop the theft of people's homes, just sheer stopping that would actually put this economy on the road to recovery, with jobs coming back and people not in such fear of losing their homes. Truly, when you've got even 10% of the population, which we have right now, in fear, either they've already lost the home, they've been broken, their money's been stolen, and they had to move out, so their whole life has been disrupted, and we have others that are fighting day and night. They can't even sleep because they're fighting, trying to figure out, how can I get these forged documents off my house so that I can keep it? And in the meantime, the foreclosure mills just keep marching and just keep grinding up the inventory. They just keep taking it. It is truly a drag on the morale and the people. And then we read these articles like I just showed this morning, where the feds can't find fraud. I can't hardly say that. I can't say it with a straight face. How can they not find fraud? It's just outrageous. Has any Fed ever contacted you, your office, Kevin?
Well, remember back in April of 2011, we saw all of the banks that we're talking about sign a consent decree with all the federal investigatory agencies, the OCC and
Right.
all of them, that we promise we won't do this anymore.
I have those on my website, and guess what? We have forged signatures after that decree. Duh.
After that, it never stopped.
Exactly.
Believe me when I tell you that when Mr. O'Brien's registry has to, literally stop at the gates here, robo-signed documents trying to be entered into this registry, which everybody in the entire country and certainly all the banks know, don't try to put something in here, and they still try to do it. What does that tell you about the other registries across the country, which are like open-ear theaters?
Exactly. How that brings a question to mind. How many do you basically regularly reject? Do you guys keep track?
Yes, we keep track because we also send, when they come in, we keep a copy of the documents for future litigation, and we also send them to the Attorney General. So, yes, we keep track of every single one, and we keep a copy of the letter we send back to the bank or the lawyers acknowledging why they're not being put on record.
Can you share with us some idea about how many of these you've actually rejected and have on record right now?
It's you know what, I haven't really, it's hundreds. It's June of I think we started doing this June of 12. So, it might have been June of 11. It's been in the hundreds. I don't venture to guess how many. I know I could find it. I just don't have it.
Right, that's fine. I'm just curious. It's because it's just so it really makes me start to visualize the foreclosure mills as headless machines. The heads are gone, and they're just going. They truly are just, the people inside are just continuing to do whatever they do without any thought. They just mail them out the way they keep mailing them out, and
well, I've always said, and I've been speaking everywhere across the country on this issue, and I can tell you, I've said this publicly everywhere I go. Until a captain of this industry is put to jail for this, this will never stop. This will not stop. It needs to be the industry, one of the major bank captains, put in jail for conspiracy, commit fraud, and until that happens, I can assure everyone on this call that this will never cease.
I totally agree, Kevin. And of course, I would just like to amend that for us homeowners and activists nationwide. We don't want one. We want them all. I want them all in prison for this
I just can't
crime.
believe it's not a conspiracy here.
I know it's a conspiracy.
It didn't sprout up because it didn't have a willing partner.
It has to be a conspiracy. Look what they do in MERS. Any member, any employee of any of the members can log in and just shift the ownership of the note, so to speak. And so they're constantly, shifting it back and forth to each other. So B of A shifts to Deutsche Bank and to Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo shifts to B of A, and it's just a mess. It really is. In fact, tomorrow on our update, I'm going to share a lawsuit filed by 3 counties in Texas against MERS and B of A, because they are, just like we talked about earlier, where's the money and who's really in charge of this big conspiracy. And yes, Lorraine has sort of bit the dust as a DocX founder, except we feel like she's the sacrificial lamb. They're just going to throw her under the bus in hopes of saving their own skins. And these counties, in their lawsuit, have actually really well said connected MERS Corp, and B of A. It is a big
I know
conspiracy.
Dave Krieger has been working with folks down there. Very, very smart guy who's been doing some stuff in Texas that I know has been very, very helpful. Nice fellow. I've talked to Dave a number of times. He's educated me on a bunch of stuff. But, remember when we did this 3 years ago, we were viewed as someone who didn't know what they were talking about.
Right. Crazy recorder.
There's been enough cases, and now Lorraine Brown, I think, but we've proven to the entire world that we did know what we were talking about, and that we were right.
Right. And I was, can you just expand a little more why you feel, well, I think you've pointed out there's some decisions in Massachusetts, but you commented you think the tide is shifting. Is there anything other than that that's giving you this impression?
Well, I think that, first of all, I know that the banks, and I deal with folks all across the country, the banks are really feeling it because they know that there's a number of significant, serious plaintiff attorney cases that are in the process of working up serious class action suits as relates to issues such as the modification of people's notes and mortgages, which the banks use a system of strategic incompetence to say they lost your documents, don't know where they are, send them again, please, I don't know what happened there, you're going to get charged for sending us a fax, no, you got to send them again. It's a strategy of strategic incompetence by the banks to stop people from getting modifications, and there's serious suits going on with all across the country to wrap around a class action suit for negligence and emotional distress that's going to be happening. The banks know that there isn't a day that goes by where if there's a story that relates to them, not good. And the general public is much wiser than it was 3 years ago. People totally get it.
Right. What really kills me is that even in these articles, when they talk about robo-signing, they act as if it was like a processing snafu, not like it was intentional forgery.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, like I've said before, that, forgery and uttering laws are in every state of the union.
Yes.
And
yes.
Those are serious things. If you and I decided we're going to go in and forge our name on an application for a mortgage or for a bank account, you'd be arrested and behind bars in a week.
Exactly.
Here they can they can do this on a routine basis as part of a business plan and get away with it. It's outrageous. But the door is shrinking because the public's uprising. People like yourself and others across the country are shouting from the top of the mountain, and the politicians will start getting it. And when they do, that's when you add the public relations and the lawsuits that are going to be happening. These banks are going to have to come clean.
Here's a question for you, Kevin, because I know that what the listeners and myself, we want our counties to do what you're doing. So what would you recommend that we do? Should we go into the recorder like that citizen that came into your office years ago with the paperwork that didn't match the records? How would you suggest that we start activism in each one of our counties? What would work, in your opinion?
I mean, let's take a look at what we know now. I mean, it's very simple. I mean, we believe that knowing what we know now, how could we allow, let's just take the most famous, Linda Green documents entered into the public land recordation bloodstream? How could we do that, knowing what we now know?
Exactly.
How could we do that?
Exactly.
I mean, if someone came to the recording counter with an assignment of mortgage that was signed by Mickey Mouse and notarized by Donald Duck, accept that?
Well, I'm telling you, they won't accept what an owner puts together, and they're charging owners for filing fraudulent documents when an owner tries to like do something to keep the property from the bankster. But they certainly aren't stopping these other things. Here's a question, because I know that the recorders take an oath of office. Is there some law that people could actually charge the recorders with if the recorder refuses to listen to what they're saying?
Well, I don't know about that. All I do know is if you're going to have a register of deeds clerk or county recorder, whatever they call themselves,
right,
whose responsibility is to maintain the integrity of the land recordation system, and yet if they're just going to be a rubber stamp for fraud, just come in with anything and put it on the land recordation system, one has to ask, why do we need them?
Exactly. We could have a machine that did that.
I mean, we don't tell other people what to do, but look at anything that we do. If anyone was interested in actually doing something to protect their citizens and do their job of protecting the land records, we'd be happy to assist them.
Thank you. Is it okay if we send out your affidavits and the DocX lawsuit, those files, links to those files, to the recorders' offices that we know of? I think I've got email addresses for all the recorders in California.
Please do, and send it. I mean, they could at least, if nothing else, they could want to be helpful. They could actually file an affidavit by February 15th that they're a victim, or they could send a letter in support of our victims here in Essex County. I mean, they can do something. I mean, the bottom line is that what we're doing is not difficult. We think it's quite simple. Doing the job we have to do. That's it.
Right.
That's all we're doing is the job that John was elected to do, that I was appointed to do. That's what we're doing. Period. End.
Right. And to not do that is to renege your responsibility.
Well, you can call it whatever you'd like.
That's what I'm going to call it, because basically the recorders and the registrars of deeds in this whole country need to recognize that this is not a secret anymore. This is actually, we've got proof. This is what they've been doing. This is now a matter of court record, and other recorders are stepping up, and I'm really focused on stopping these foreclosures at the local level, because nobody else seems to be helping us. Now, here's a question for you, Kevin. They're still filing these documents because let's go back to the process. You see, they send you a document. It's got a forgery name on it, so you reject it. Say the affidavit. They never respond. They create a different one. They send it. You forward to the Attorney General, but the homeowner that got that document recorded on their property, they're still at risk of losing the house, right?
Well, I wouldn't say they're at the risk of losing their house, but certainly the integrity of their chain of title has been impugned. And the whole idea here is, if they go to refinance, or if they go to try to potentially sell their house, and then the same banks that created the fraud are going to look at it and say, oh, geez, we did a title search, and we wanted to get you some title insurance, but you got a Linda Green signature on your chain of title. You got to fix that up, Mr. Homeowner. You know
something? In my experience, the banks don't even know or care. In fact, when they sell their foreclosed properties, they will delete. You know that preliminary title reports are now computerized, and whichever escrow company is generating that preliminary title report has the ability to lie and remove clouds on title. I know for a fact they do this. This is why the banksters want to use Chicago Title Company, because when they will motivate or incent the buyers to do so by saying, oh, we'll pay title insurance if you use our escrow company. And so when that unsuspecting buyer uses that company to to do the title report looks clean. And then when they own the property and go to sell it, and a real honest, relatively speaking, title company like First American Fidelity does the title report, they discover the cloud. And then they say, oh, I can't insure it. And so then the buyer and the seller are left hanging in the wind going, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And Chicago Title says, oh, well, we'll reinsure it. See? So now you've got the banksters, you've got the thieves generating a guaranteed business income stream based on their fraud in the first place.
Well, this is how it is in the history right now. Who's to say what the history is going to be 24 months from now?
Right. In other words, let's put all of these people in prison and let's clean up our records. Now, here's another quick question. I know we're almost time to go, and we've so appreciated your sharing. Here's a question. What if I don't even know how to say it. You know that these 10,000 records with Doc X are now deemed by court to be forgeries. So is there, if the court cannot get the bank to fix them or to get them recorded correctly, are you disallowing these? Is the recorder somehow going to court and saying, all of these records we know are forged, so judge, get rid of them?
Well, let's see how we make out in April 9th.
So right now, you haven't actually gone to a court, to another judge locally, to say, by affidavit, we know that these documents are forgeries, or they're on this robo-signing list, and we would like these documents disallowed or de-recorded. I don't know, is there some method to do that? Do you know of any method
They
like
stay
that?
on the land recordation system, but they can be repaired, and that's part of what we're requesting the judge to do in Florida. But if we're not successful here, knowing what we now know, we'll see.
And so, assuming that the whole thing, because a forensic auditor has gone through many of these assignments, for example, the trustee substitutions, where Cal Reconveyance gives the new trustee to themselves, which is completely voidable. I was just wondering if the judge could void them. I don't think these things could be, quote, repaired other than voided. I don't know.
What you do is you file the proper assignment, and you have to make sure that assignment has the proper chain of title in the front and the back of it. That's what you do. And that's what the banks, if we're successful here, will be very nervous about.
Yes, because I totally believe they cannot do that. We had a discussion this last couple of weeks, couple of different days, on the tangible and intangible property types and rights and statutes. And what the banks have basically done is taken a tangible paper note and deed of trust, and they've stripped the payment stream off the note into an intangible property. And once you do that, you've shifted from certain statutes to different statutes, and you can never put them back together legally. That's why they've had to forge all of these documents. So the whole thing, how it plays out, we're all waiting to see, and mostly the owners want this stuff to stop.
Well, I mean, one could conclude, like I said from the very beginning of this program, that we live in a country of laws. A country was built on people's property rights, and this is America. You don't take people's homes with fraudulent documentation.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We know that so far they have been taking the homes with fraudulent documentation, but we're fighting back. So this is CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice, signing off for today. And thank you, Kevin, again, and keep us updated on the decision coming down in April.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.